What if I told you that Canada is finally hitting back at the United States in a way that could change everything? Imagine a world where America's long-standing dominance over its northern neighbor is finally challenged. The latest move by Donald Trump, imposing a crushing 50% tariff on Canadian steel and aluminum, has pushed Canada to its breaking point. But this time, Canada isn't staying silent. It's firing back, and the consequences could shake the global economy. In a stunning move, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has announced retaliatory tariffs that will directly impact the United States. These tariffs, totaling a staggering US $106 billion, will target a wide range of American goods: lumber, plastics, vegetables, alcohol, appliances, furniture, perfume, and even sports equipment are all on the list. But here's the real kicker. If Trump doesn't back down, Canada's countermeasures will expand even further within just 3 weeks. The stakes couldn't be higher. The U.S. economy is deeply intertwined with Canada's, and these tariffs could send shockwaves through industries on both sides of the border. American businesses that rely on Canadian materials and trade will face devastating cost increases. Prices of everyday goods in the U.S. could skyrocket, pushing inflation even higher. And for Canada, this marks a turning point, one where it refuses to be bullied into submission. But Trump's tariffs are just one piece of a much bigger game. His recent comments about Canada potentially becoming the 51st U.S. state have ignited a firestorm of outrage. While some might brush it off as typical Trump rhetoric, to many Canadians, this is an insult of the highest order. Trudeau has made it clear Canada is independent, sovereign, and unwilling to bow to American pressure. The mere suggestion of U.S. annexation has only strengthened Canada's resolve to stand its ground. Tensions between these two nations haven't been this high in years. Economists are already warning that a full-scale trade war could be looming. Supply chains could be disrupted, jobs could be lost, and economic growth in both countries could stall. The last time Trump imposed tariffs on Canada, it led to severe backlash. But this time, Canada is responding with unprecedented force. For the American public, these tariffs could mean higher prices on essential goods, making daily life even more expensive. Businesses that rely on Canadian imports, from construction companies to retailers, are already sounding the alarm. If Canada follows through on its threat to escalate, the damage could be irreversible. The question is, will Trump listen before it's too late? And at the same time, many Americans are beginning to realize that these tariffs may backfire. Canadian exports play a crucial role in the U.S. economy. If Trump continues down this path, he might be walking straight into a financial disaster of his own making. Could this be the moment when Canada finally turns the tide on years of economic strong-arming by the United States? The world is watching closely. Global markets are reacting. Investors are on edge, and leaders from other countries are weighing in. If Trump's tariffs spiral into a full-scale trade war, it won't just be Canada and the U.S. that suffer. The ripple effects could be felt worldwide. Meanwhile, Canada's strong and calculated response is proving that it's not the passive neighbor many assumed it to be. For decades, the U.S. has called the shots in North American trade. But now Canada is showing that it has the power to fight back. With a massive economic counterstrike in motion, Trudeau is making a bold statement. Canada won't be bullied. The coming weeks will determine the future of this economic standoff. Will Trump back down, or will he push forward and risk an all-out trade war? One thing is certain, this battle isn't over, and as the tension escalates, one can't help but wonder, has the era of U.S. economic dominance over Canada finally come to an end? The tension between Canada and the United States is reaching a boiling point, and the stakes could not be higher. With the U.S. imposing new tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum, the economic impact threatens to spiral into a full-blown crisis. But this is not just about trade. It is about sovereignty, survival, and the fight to protect national interests. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau stands at the forefront, warning of the dire consequences that could unfold. Trudeau has made it clear that the consequences of these tariffs will not only harm Canada, but will also backfire on the U.S. itself. He recalled the tariffs of 2018, which resulted in 75,000 job losses in the United States. The past serves as a grim reminder of what lies ahead if history repeats itself. Despite the mounting pressure, Trudeau remains steadfast, ensuring that Canada is ready to retaliate if necessary. "We will respond as appropriate in a calibrated but extremely strong way," he asserted, making it evident that Canada will not be bullied into submission. He emphasized the government's unwavering commitment to defending Canadian workers and businesses, prepared to take any measures required to protect the country's economic interests. As the tension escalates, another controversy emerges: the suggestion that Canada could become the 51st state of the U.S. President Donald Trump's remarks have sparked outrage among Canadian leaders, who have unanimously condemned the notion. Trudeau dismissed the idea outright, calling it a non-starter, and reaffirming Canada's independence. His stance was echoed by Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre, who stated firmly, "Canada will never be the 51st state, period." Green Party leader Elizabeth May took a humorous jab at the situation, suggesting that perhaps U.S. states like California, Oregon, and Washington should consider joining Canada instead. Meanwhile, Ontario Premier Doug Ford turned the tables by jokingly proposing that Canada should purchase Alaska and Minnesota. Beyond the rhetoric and political theatrics, the economic impact of these tariffs is staggering. Canada is the largest exporter of aluminum to the U.S., providing materials crucial for industries ranging from automotive manufacturing to construction. Aluminum, valued for its lightweight durability, is integral to producing vehicles, aircraft, and essential infrastructure. Canadian steel, too, plays a critical role in American industries, with exports amounting to billions annually. The deeply integrated supply chains between the two nations mean that any disruption will have widespread ramifications. Increased costs for businesses and consumers on both sides of the border are inevitable. The situation is further complicated by Canada's vital role in supplying the U.S. with oil, electricity, and other key resources. The U.S. relies heavily on Canadian crude, which constitutes a significant percentage of its oil consumption. A halt in exports could trigger an immediate supply shock, sending fuel prices skyrocketing. Historical data suggests that even a 25% tariff on Canadian oil could lead to a 35-cent per gallon increase in gasoline prices. A complete halt would have catastrophic consequences, particularly in regions like the Midwest, which depend heavily on Canadian crude for refining and transportation. Electricity is another critical factor. States such as New York, Vermont, and Michigan rely on Canadian hydroelectric power to sustain their energy needs. Ontario alone supplies enough electricity to power over 1 million U.S. homes. If this supply were disrupted, affected states would face blackouts and soaring energy costs. Forced to turn to more expensive and environmentally harmful alternatives like coal and natural gas, the impact would be felt across the board, particularly during harsh winter months when heating demand is at its peak. The automotive and manufacturing sectors stand to suffer the most. The U.S. auto industry is heavily dependent on Canadian steel and aluminum for vehicle production. If Canada ceases exports, American manufacturers will face material shortages, production delays, and cost increases, with alternative suppliers such as China, Brazil, and Australia offering pricier and less reliable options. The long-term repercussions could cripple the industry. Similarly, the construction sector, reliant on steel and aluminum for infrastructure projects, would experience delays and skyrocketing expenses, impacting everything from skyscrapers to bridges. Pressing ahead with steep tariffs on Canada and Mexico risks exacerbating the U.S. housing crisis and threatening the broader economy. Dozens of congressional Democrats have warned Donald Trump, the U.S. president, after threatening to hit imports from the U.S.'s two biggest trading partners with a 25% tax, is weighing how to proceed after approving a one-month delay. In a letter to Trump, seen by The Guardian, Democrats noted that the U.S. imports key construction materials worth billions of dollars, from lumber to cement products, from Canada and Mexico each year. Given the severe housing shortage, compounded by rising construction costs, persistent supply chain disruptions, and an estimated shortfall of 6 motor homes, These looming tariffs, while intended to protect domestic industries, risk further exacerbating the housing supply and affordability crisis while stifling the development of new housing, they wrote. In a statement, the White House claimed Trump would use tariffs to usher in a new era of growth and prosperity for the U.S. Trump has repeatedly vowed to impose tariffs on Canada and Mexico, a move he has said will spur his country's neighbors to work harder to reduce the number of immigrants crossing into the U.S. and stem the flow of fentanyl. The proposed duties are sweeping, however, hitting all imports from both countries, raising concerns that they could raise prices throughout the U.S. economy. Trump pulled back from the brink earlier this month following 11th-hour talks with Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico and Justin Trudeau of Canada. U.S. officials are in talks with both countries ahead of the new deadline, 4th March, when tariffs are now due to be enforced. More than 40 Democrats in the House of Representatives, led by Jim Costa of California, urged the White House to consider house-building industry estimates that the proposed tariffs on Canada and Mexico, paired with duties already charged on Chinese goods, will raise the cost of imported construction materials by up to $4 billion. Such increases are often passed on to consumers, directly contributing to higher home prices and a slowdown in new construction activity, further burdening American families, they wrote. Immediate action will not only shield American families from escalating housing costs, but also demonstrate leadership in steering our nation towards sustainable economic growth, the representatives wrote to Trump. We stand ready to work with you and other stakeholders to develop a balanced trade policy that bolsters domestic manufacturing while ensuring that safe, affordable housing remains accessible to all citizens. The representatives, all Democrats, stressed that they were looking forward to collaborating with the White House on solutions that promote robust economic growth, protect American families, and secure a vibrant housing market for the future. Kush Desai, a White House spokesperson, said, "In his first administration, President Trump instituted an America First economic agenda of tariffs, tax cuts, deregulation, and an unleashing of American energy that resulted in historic job, wage, and investment growth with no inflation. In his second administration, President Trump will again use tariffs to level the playing field and usher in a new era of growth and prosperity for American industry and workers. Food security is also at risk. Canada is a major agricultural supplier to the U.S., exporting billions worth of essential goods, including beef, pork, wheat, and vegetable oils. Any disruption in this supply chain would have immediate consequences, leading to shortages and price hikes in American supermarkets. Fresh produce, dairy, and meat products would become more expensive, affecting millions of consumers. The intertwined agricultural trade relationship between the two nations means that such a shift would be deeply disruptive, impacting not just food prices, but also farmers and supply chain workers. The trade war between Canada and the U.S. is more than just a political dispute. It is a battle for economic stability and national sovereignty. The consequences extend far beyond tariffs, affecting industries, jobs, and everyday lives. As both nations brace for the fallout, one thing is certain: Canada will not back down. The world watches as this high-stakes confrontation unfolds, knowing that the outcome will shape the future of North American trade for years to come.